Well, the Gunfighters has to be one of the worst Doctor Who's of all time. To me, it was an absolute travesty. I don't know whether it was cashing in on the cowboys and Indians that kids played in the playground. The fact that despite all kinds of things, William Hartnell found it a hell of a pain to have his tuff pulled down, even though he'd been up against Daleks and all that kind of stuff. And then you see him in pain over something like a little tuff. It didn't ring true. I felt that it was just basically cashing in at the time on the fact that kids liked cowboys and Indians. For a historical story, it was crap. The same goes for The Chase. The so-called Dalek time tunnel, which was simply a piece of card that spun around, which was so obvious, and literally, detracted from the plot. I felt The Chase was just a drawn-out chase, basically, that should have come to an end quite a few episodes earlier. Anyway, those are two of the worst, in my opinion. One of the all-time classics has to have been An Unearthly Child, followed by Daleks. The Unearthly Child was brilliant and introduced the characters Susan Foreman, Ian Chesterton, and Barbara Wright, as well as obviously the Doctor. Brilliantly well told, and showed children exactly what caveman times were like. And of course the Daleks, who can forget them? Absolutely brilliant, iconic, when Barbara came face to face with one at the end of episode 1. Now this I could watch time and time again. The Daleks was just brilliant and introduced a legend into Doctor Who. It had never been seen before. You can have your Star Trek, you can have all that rubbish. I'll stick with DW. Well, the second Doctor, there's a lot to say about him. Patrick Troughton played it brilliantly. He had the hardest job. He had to take over from William Hartnell, who, because of ill health, decided to give up the role. And 1 minute, from what people, because I wasn't born then obviously, but from what people say, they completely forgot about William Hartnell when Troughton took over. It was such an easy transition, you could actually believe it was the same person. Now we all know that regeneration today is, something that happens in Doctor Who, we've seen it. But it was a new concept then. It had never been tried before, changing the lead actor halfway through a successful series. It could have been disastrous. The public might not have taken to the new face, but they took to Patrick Troughton like, he was an old uncle or whatever. And the children loved him. And he was approachable. He was just highly intelligent, yet also funny. And you felt like, you could approach him, you could ask him questions, whereas with the first Doctor, he was so grumpy and that, you couldn't ask him questions. So Patrick Troughton is definitely the best. I can't see any crap episodes, really. I can't think of any of them. I nearly forgot one of the best episodes of all time had to be. It just has to be The Tomb of the Cybermen. I love the fact of how he talks to Victoria about how he coped with losing his own family. He said, when I close my eyes, I see them whenever I want. And that's what you must do. And it was so poignant and brilliant for children who'd lost their parents or lost somebody close to them, even if it was an animal or whatever. It was just so well written. And the fact he used mathematical genius to open the Cyberman hatch. It was just brilliant and of course iconic, as it was the start of the new race of Cybermen. After the excellent Patrick Troughton, nobody thought anyone would be able to follow in his footsteps. They thought they'd cast another comedian by the name of Jon Pertwee, who was well known in the Navy Lark. But Jon Pertwee decided to play it straight. And it actually worked, because it was about the time of the New Adventures and everything else. The Doctor Who had to really get pretty physical, which he did. He did a lot of karate and stuff like that. But down to the episodes. Death to the Daleks was very disappointing. Elizabeth Sladen and John Pertwee played it as best as they could against the crap script that had the Daleks with machine guns and flipping him cranking up the TARDIS. I've never seen anything so stupid in all my life. But down to the good episodes, we get to finally see the Time Lords again in full colour, and the Doctor meet his previous selves, which was unheard of in a programme before, where he met up with William Hartnell and Patrick Troughton. William Hartnell unfortunately had ill health, but that was a classic. It really was a classic, and you'll never see anything. Even the Five Doctors, in my opinion, doesn't measure up. So John Pertwee's era was brilliant. It brought in a lot more action, a lot more frills and spills. He used his brain and his brawn, and he was a large enough character to carry that frilly shirt without appearing a bit effeminate. I've met Pertwee in real life at the Longleat exhibition, and I have to say, in real life, he was very, very grumpy and that, and I was disappointed, whereas Anthony Ainley was pretty decent. And I have to say that because I was there. I don't care what people say, I only speak from experience. You know, I only speak from experience. That's what I like about Tennant. He actually gets in there and helps fans and enjoys the work. So, there you have it. Moving on swiftly to Baker. Power of Kroll was pretty rubbish. It was in the Key to Time series. I've got my favourites of Tom Baker. I think he was whimsical, he was funny. He basically was a larger-than-life character. His eyes glittered, as I said, when he got excited about things like a small child, which I think that basically Tennant has brought into his Doctor, and the smile as well, when he grins all over his face. You know what I mean? The two Romanas, Mary Tam, I had a crush on her as a kid, and Lalla Ward wasn't too bad either. Peter Davison was the golden era of Doctor Who. Came from All Creatures Great and Small, was well known, had a brilliant cast to work with, and absolutely played it perfectly. I have to be fast now. Time Flight was rubbish, in my opinion. It was one of the worst episodes of his season. One of his best was Castrovalva, when he actually took over all the Doctor's voices, when he says, "Not far now, Brigadier," and all that. Absolutely brilliant. I think the most notable ones is basically Caves of Androzani, where we actually see him regenerate into Colin Baker, where previous we see Tegan in Resurrection of the Daleks. I think Planet of Fire was brilliant as well. It really was a damn good season for him. Frontiers was amazing when the TARDIS broke up. There is so much I could say about this Doctor, but I would say the best thing was summed up by what David Tennant said: "You are my Doctor." Because he really was. David Tennant used to watch him when he was a kid, and so did I. To me, Peter Davison is the Doctor. And David Tennant has based his character a lot on that, with the trainers, with the fast, how fast he is, how he runs everywhere and everything else. I'm sure he gets from Peter Davison. I'm sure he gets it from him. So definitely my Doctor. Oh dear, where did it all go wrong? From the minute he put on that stupid coat that was so tasteless, even Joseph and his Technicolor Dreamcoat would tell him to tone it down. And what about flipping the fact when he tried to strangle Perry? I mean, that is not the Doctor that we know and love. Colin Baker played it as best as he could, but already I think the BBC gave him the shitiest scripts that he could possibly have, with the exception of Mark of the Rani, which I think just brought in the Rani and the Master, which wasn't too bad. And then we had a few decent ones like the Two Doctors, which brought in Patrick Troughton, and I think they both played off well against each other. But unfortunately, you can't play against something that's louder than a part, and that stupid outfit of his, it just made a mockery. You couldn't take him seriously. It was a bad decision by John Nathan Turner. It was a decision that virtually destroyed the program. Virtually destroyed